If you watch the news, there are many stories going on right now, different topics, different crises around the world and in our country. Unlawful immigration. It's a big deal. It affects many of our states. It affects many people and families. Whatever side of the fence you're on about it, there's a byproduct of it during these big, dangerous protests. We're going to talk about that today. You're listening and watching the SAFESECURE 360 podcast. There's safety in numbers.
Lieutenant Robert Henry is an honorably retired law enforcement commander from Houston with over 35 years of public service experience. I'm Daniel Ziegler. I've been asking questions all my life, and on this show, I do my best to ask the questions that the public would like to know the answer to. The SAFESECURE 360 podcast is intended to provide you, the listener, with information about current events and ongoing societal challenges to help make your life safer. Thank you for listening. This is the SAFESECURE 360 podcast. There is safety in numbers. Well, Robert, thanks for sitting down and talking with us today. We've been watching on the news as these protests related to the ICE raids have been going on for over a week now. They started last Saturday and they still are going on now. So tell us, why is this something that a security show would talk about? This is SAFESECURE 360 podcast. We talk about safety and security. Why is this an interesting subject to us?
Well, you just said it's safety and security of who? These types of protests certainly are allowed by the Constitution in the non-violent, non-destructive format. What may begin that way as an organized protest, you're objecting to something or you're supporting something or you're on one side or the other, becomes out of control whenever the group and the dynamic of the group starts violating the law and starts violating safety and security procedures that are in place to manage an event of this type. And the next thing you know, you expected 1,000 people to show up, there's 5,000. And when that happens, there's all these personalities, whether you're on the supportive side or not, begin objecting typically to control measures, which could be bike rack fencing or do not enter this area. They start pushing those boundaries. And when that happens, you get the attention of the police. It works every time. And then here we go.
So the police are trained to allow a peaceful protest to happen, and then they've set up, what I hear you saying is they've set up these boundaries, is just the great way to say it. The second the crowd starts pushing the boundaries, all of a sudden the police officers they've been trained for when protests are not peaceful as well. And so their training switches. I've heard you say before, the other tape starts playing. They see, well, these people are all of a sudden not a peaceful protest anymore. This is getting bigger and more dangerous than it was before. Not a lot of talk in the news has been on the side of the police or from the perspective of the police. How do the police read a situation like that, and who decides what reaction the police force takes as a protest stops becoming peaceful and starts getting out of control?
We consult on crowd and group dynamics like at a music festival. You have a lot of people all put into one place, took a long time to get there. We have to think about planning as to what if there's a fire or lightning strike, how would we evacuate these folks, or an active shooter? How would we run? How would we avoid? How would we leave that area safely? What if it was a school or an outdoor sporting event? So if the organizers of these protests, which purportedly begin peacefully, they apply for a permit, they're granted the permit, they're given a location, a time, they're given some prohibited items that they probably cannot have. And a lot of that is going to deal with pyrotechnics or anything that burns or anything that you could throw that's a liquid that may or may not be water or could be other things. Use your imagination. So when you start pushing the boundaries, exceeding your area, exceeding the time, there may or may not be a curfew in place, you exceed that. You start damaging property that's not yours, or looting, or objecting to the police presence verbally is not a big deal. It's when you start throwing things at the police and when you start hitting the police or damaging the patrol cars, and we'll show some video about this, what we're talking about. When you start damaging patrol cars with huge boulders being dropped from overpasses, that's a whole different vibe, and that's a whole different response that you're about to get. Because if you wanted the police attention, now you've got it, and they're going to come with a solution.
Well, these dropping boulders and other reports are of throwing commercial-grade fireworks, riding motorcycles into police lines. These are dangerous, violent, and could cause death to the police. It's not that the police aren't necessarily looking for a problem, but you've now brought one to them, and they have to respond in kind to that. What's interesting to me is I saw a quote from the LAPD police chief, Jim McDonald, and he said, "These engaging in violence were not among the people demonstrating against the raids, but are people who do this all the time." He was talking about there are these people that are just having their protests and they sign up for a permit and all this, but other people are latching onto it to make it a violent thing, and that violence sort of gets contagious. Let's switch perspectives now. You're at a protest as a crowd member, and you start to realize that boulders are getting thrown or fireworks are getting shot off or you hear gunfire. How do you stay safe in a situation like that where the environment is becoming violent?
My advice would be watch a similar or watch some news or social media before you decide to go there and say, look, is this really what I'm about? Is this what I believe? Is this what I'm against? Whatever motivation brings you there, do a little pre-homework on it and see, look, are people being arrested? Are they throwing tear gas? Are there less lethal weapons being used by the police? Has the police line of control been broken and now this event is out of control? You'll know that very quickly by looking at that social media source and determining, look, I'm against this or I'm for this. However, I'm not for that. I'm not for being arrested. I'm not for being tear gas, shot with a rubber bullet, or other types of solutions that the police may bring. So if it's not your thing, stay at home and watch it on television. Support whoever you will, or don't support who you don't want to. But going to a crowd like that can be potentially dangerous. So let's say you made it. You decide, I'm going. I'm there. You park your car, you go. There may be protesters who are organic, who are believers in the cause, that they're there. They have peaceful intentions and they want to do the right thing. They have a sign, a shirt. They may be chanting. They may use a bullhorn. Those are all proper things to do. However, there may be professional, shall we call them, organized agitators, which may come from outside of the community there simply for the purpose of disrupting your peaceful event with a very powerful message. Those are the ones that take it to the next level. Those are the ones that incite this group mob mentality to begin doing things that are destructive and potentially harmful or deadly to everyone there.
So it seems to me that these people are all of a sudden doing things that are violent or deadly to the police force. The police force can either leave, there's probably lots of options. I can't possibly imagine all of them. But what they've talked about a lot is these less than lethal weapons. The police force is saying, we're not going to leave. Another thing that you said earlier that just crosses my mind is the police are there to protect these people from each other. In case of a fire, an evacuation needs to happen. There needs to be somebody trained to help a group of people get out. So part of the police presence is that they're just trying to maintain the peace. They're called peace officers oftentimes. And so they're using these less than lethal weapons. Can you describe what those are and how does it go about where they now have the right to use the less than lethal weapons on the crowd?
Yeah, those are good questions. All right, let me start off by saying it's tough, and we've said this before. It's tough to be a police officer in 2025. If you don't think so, turn on these riots, and you'll see a lot of the times that there is a static line of police officers, National Guard. I believe Marines are involved at some point in Los Angeles. And their objective and their instructions are to maintain this building where looters don't come, people don't deface it with graffiti, they don't break out windows, they don't commit offenses against this property. And they're there, they're holding this perimeter, and here they come. Here come the protesters. And they're not just verbally protesting. They are trying to break through that line. They are throwing things at the police. They're dressed in all black, or they have masks on and hoodies on. You can't affix their identity. Everyone has a cell phone now. I'm not sure what they're going to do with all this cell phone video they're taking, especially when it results in them being arrested. The police have their own video from multiple aspects, and it's going to be very important to discover that and use that not only for a prosecution of that case, but also for future training purposes, right? What did we do wrong on that LA immigration deal? What could we improve on to make it safer for the public? Okay, so let's talk. You ask about less than lethal force. Let's define it first of all with lethal. You're saying less than. What's lethal force? Well, lethal force is any type of force that can be used against someone that may or likely will result in serious bodily injury or death. It's commonly a pistol is a lethal force instrument. A vehicle that runs over someone is a lethal force instrument. But let's change gears for a moment. What about the protesters' lethal force components? If you drop a cinder block from an overpass 25 or 30 or 40 feet down below and it impacts someone, there's lethal force right there. Would you agree? They're dead. If you drop it down and it goes through a police car windshield and hits the driver, he may be dead also. All right, so less than lethal force is other methods of force which do not have the same predictable outcome of serious bodily injury or death. All right. In this riot protest scenario, common items are used. The first of all is a smoke grenade. A smoke grenade in and of itself has no danger to it. It is an incendiary device, but it has no danger. It's a white or red or green smoke that is sent out into a crowd that is designed to disrupt or designed to disorient persons who have a collective agenda to harm someone or to organize in a certain way by arming themselves. They are a predictable danger to this event. So the low-level one would be a smoke grenade. Another low-level one is, believe it or not, a megaphone by the police giving them instructions. Do not do this. Stop doing this. Don't do this. Or there will be consequences, typically your arrest. All right? The next less than lethal weapon that's used, it's kind of a hierarchy getting more intense now, is tear gas. Tear gas typically is two types of it. There's oleoresin capsicum-based spray. It could be delivered in a projectile also. And then there is CN and CS vaporized gas, which is devastating. If you've ever been in a tear gas cloud, you'll remember it. So the use of tear gas may be designed and delivered to divert a group away from some area, or it may be designed to disperse a crowd if it's launched into the center of them. But when you get this tear gas, it's very strong. And you'll see a lot of these protesters have commercial grade gas masks on. They're prepared. You'll also see some of these protesters pick up the can of tear gas and throw it back towards the police where it was launched from. Well, the police have tear gas masks on as well. The next level, tear gas is effective, however, difficult to control. You're at the mercy of the wind, and you're at the mercy of someone getting that canister that's still discharging and sending it back to the sender, and now that wasn't an outcome that you projected you would have, right? The next less than lethal use of force, which is becoming more and more common now, you may have seen it on television, we'll show some video of it, is where a person is shot with a rubber bullet. It's really not a bullet. I guess it is if you expel it from a gun and it shoots you, but it doesn't, by its design, desire to kill you. It is an impact round that is going to impact your skin or your clothes or whatever you have, and it's going to hurt. It's going very fast, but it's very large, and when it hits you, it will get your attention for sure. Certainly not designed to be aimed or fired in the facial area or perhaps the groin area, but think of a bowling pin starting at your chest. That's probably the best site, or your back is probably the best site. Believe me, it hurts a lot, and it's designed to get your attention. It's designed to let you know, hey, we're serious. We verbally warned you. We warned you by our presence. We warned you, don't do this, and you continue doing it. That's another less than lethal force. Okay, here comes the big one. If you've been watching these videos in this media, we'll show you one again. Here come the horses. Horses, for crowd control, are highly trained assets to the police. They're typically very tall, 18 hands, very tall. They weigh 2,000 pounds, and they have been trained and exposed to crowds. They've been trained and exposed to the techniques of creating a barricade where you can't go any further, of biting you perhaps, of hitting you with their head-butting you, or side-kicking you, or using their entire body to flex 2,000 pounds into you abruptly is a big deal. You're going to move, because it's an overwhelming, powerful thing that happens when these horses, they could step on you. The Texas Department of Public Safety in Texas, where we're from, uses Clydesdale-type horses with the huge hooves on them that are furry, and if one of them stepped on you, it would be very bad. So that's another use of force that is less than lethal.
Well, thank you all for watching and listening. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and click the like button on this episode. This will keep you up to date with what we're up to, and it will help our channel grow and reach new people. Like we always say, there is safety in numbers. Everything you described would have less impact than a boulder dropping on you. So do they have a standing order? Forgive me if I'm saying this wrong, but I'm curious. Do they have a standing order that when the protesters start using lethal force on them, they now can use less than lethal force? Or does someone have to make a call over the radio? It's now time for less than lethal force. How does that work in a crowd situation like that?
The police are being commanded by commanders who are making certain decisions collectively for all the officers to work in a certain mindset. They've been trained on this. However, before certain decisions can be made at the top, if you will, of leadership and management, you may have a situation just to present itself right now in front of an officer where a person decides to display a firearm or use deadly force in some way, they're not going to wait for some instruction or approval to allow that protection and defense to occur. So if you notice, and remember, if people were being shot with firearms or people were being killed by the police, it would be a whole different narrative. You're not really seeing that. I'm not seeing that where that's occurred. If it was occurring, that's terrible. But I want you to remember one thing, and this is very important if you're a prospective protester. I encourage you to stand up for what you think is right or object to what you do not. It's what our premise of our country was built on. Do it peacefully. Do it within the law. Do it reasonably. And whenever the police show up, or if the police are there and they start enacting new rules and requirements for you, follow them. Because if you don't, you open yourself up to risk. So the police use of force level is reactive mostly, and sometimes predictive of what they're going to be defending themselves from. Would you like to be a police officer and be pepper sprayed? Would you like to be a police officer and be hit with a stick? Would you like to be a police officer with a trash can lid? Or would you like to be spit on? Or would you like to be huge rocks thrown at you, or liquids of unknown origin, perhaps urine, thrown on you? It's a tough job to do this, but they're doing it. And I think they're doing it pretty well. You don't like the outcome if you're the one in handcuffs, but look how many protesters there are. Look how few the police there are. You have to stand out in a crowd to get the police attention. And when you do, they're going to focus on you, and they're going to have a resolution for your improper behavior. SAFESECURE 360. We are a security consulting group located in the Woodlands, Texas. We assist our multiple clients by reducing the risk, loss, and reputation impact. We also do full security assessments on their facilities, large churches, large private schools in Texas, and we want to help you. Take a look at our website, safesecure360.com.
And again, this is all to keep as many people safe as possible. It's very interesting. As you were talking about that, I was thinking the protesters may weigh the danger of going to the protest or not, and then they might leave when it gets violent. The police officer doesn't really have that choice. And so what they're weighing is, how can I keep the most people safe at all times is what the proper mindset would be. It's really interesting. Furthermore, there are the same amount of police officers on duty as there were the day before these protests started. How does it work that the police can all of a sudden respond to, we were talking about in the office, it occurred to me that the police can't be doing their normal routes and be responding to these protests. How does it work when something like this goes on in a city? How do they manage resources to get enough police officers to still keep everyone at home safe as well?
Take a look at some of these videos where you see the police mobilized out there, right? You have hundreds of police officers mobilized at a scene in downtown Los Angeles. Well, wait a minute. What about all the other crime in Los Angeles, all the other burglaries that are going on, all the other aggravated robberies that are happening, all the other traffic accidents, all the other crime? You just can't say, well, we're not coming to you, 911, to help you because we're at the riots. So police leadership and managers have to determine staffing levels which are appropriate not only to maintain order of their routine duties, but also this new pop-up need now where you thought there would be permitted 500 people at, now there's 5,000, and there are a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are violent. That takes more resources. How long can you work protecting a riot, protecting yourself, protecting citizens, protecting property? That's really the hierarchy. If you don't protect yourself as a police officer, you can't protect the citizen. If you don't protect the citizen, then you can't protect the property. So it's a three-tiered approach: protection of self, protection of others, and then protection of property and general behavior of other protesters as well. They could be victimized by other protesters, perhaps inadvertently. It can happen. So it's a tough thing. So law enforcement management, we saw an interview with the Los Angeles police chief, and he said we are inadequately prepared to handle this and to handle our regular duties. This wasn't a scheduled thing. Hey, by the way, we're going to have 5,000 violent protesters today on the streets of Los Angeles at 3 o'clock. Get ready. Well, your day shift is still on. They're all patrolling. They all have cars. They're all out working. All of a sudden, you need to double or triple your police force to handle this riot situation. And when do police rest? And what do they eat? And how does this all work when they're injured? And how does EMS and fire fit into all this, and the dispatchers? It's very complicated. And the bottom line is, I'll leave you with this about this point. The protesters that I saw, some of, were saying, we're not leaving until the police and the National Guard and anybody else that's a regulatory agency leaves. Well, I have a message for you. The police are never leaving. They're not leaving. They're going to stay there until their objectives are met. And their objectives are public safety. And they are mandated to do that. If the city can't do it, the state needs to do it. If the state can't do it, the federal government needs to do it. But someone has got to be in control of people that are being injured and perhaps killed by these rioters for their own reasons. So it's a tough scenario.
It would be really difficult to be at the end of a 12-hour shift as an officer still making good decisions for the good of the group here. It would be really difficult to continue to make, and then you get a couple hours break and you got to get back on the shift. It's not easy. Like you said, it's a difficult thing to be a police officer, especially given extreme circumstances like this certainly was. This was a week-long protest. I saw people walking down the entire highway, just blocking up that whole thing. That's really dangerous for people driving, for people walking, for the police officers too. It's dangerous for everybody. So I've read that there were over 500 arrests made, from failure to disperse up to attempted murder and assault with a deadly weapon. A lot of the arrests were for ignoring curfew and violating that curfew. Why did they set in a curfew, and what would that do for the good of the people? What does a curfew do?
A curfew is an order by a regulatory agency with authority over the area that you're attempting to impact. So let's say your target is Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles. It can also be compartmentalized down to a 6-block range, or the central business district, or this street to that street to this street to that street. You can designate and geo-fence off that area and say, look, by order of the mayor, by order of the city manager, by order of whoever has that authority, you, the public, is not allowed to be conducting commerce or be visibly present in this area during this time period. If you are, and you present yourself out there driving or walking or whatever you're doing, you then are in violation of this order and subject to criminal issues. Could result in arrest, could result in a citation, could be both. So a curfew is designed to kind of push the reset button and allow resources to regroup and allow there to be a little more semblance of control over a certain area versus anything goes. Here comes the traffic. Here comes the people. It's an order that is given, that is very seriously entered into when you have some real control issues.
It sounds like it would give at least the chance for, if two people or two groups of people are clashing, it's hard to stop clashing. But the curfew, what I'm hearing you say is that it gives a chance for either side to rethink their position and come back at the conflict in a different way. And that seems like a really wise thing to do and important. And, just having enough resources for all the officers to get some sleep is very valuable in that time. 12 officers were injured, the last count I saw, during this process, from having commercial-grade fireworks thrown at them to having a motorcycle driven into a line of police officers. So that's a real hard thing. At my job, I don't have any chance really besides tripping of getting injured. And these men and women are going in and risking their bodies and the safety of their lives to try to uphold the peace. How do police officers maintain a level of it would be difficult for me to have somebody be trying to just right up trying to hurt me, not even me, just based on the clothes I'm wearing, trying to hurt me. How do you, as a police officer, you have experience with this, how do you stay cool and make a good decision in that moment?
Training in these environments, training in interpersonal conflicts between unorganized groups or individuals, like on a family disturbance. You have to be trained and exposed to techniques which may allow you to attempt to de-escalate that behavior, that you use restraint in using force as much as you can until the line is crossed and you become personally a victim, or you are protecting someone who is becoming a victim. Then you must take action to stop that other person's use of that unlawful force or deadly force in some cases. So hats off to our police officers. Number one, to show up and do that job. Number two, just look at the video and imagine would you like to do that? Could you do it? Would you do it? You probably wouldn't want to do it, but they do it. And hats off to our National Guard. They do it. And hats off to our Marines. I don't know too much about the deployment, how that went, but they do it. So how unfortunate that there are not other methods that the public, who are strong advocates of a position or any position, have to enter into an arena such as this in the streets of Los Angeles that are really just out of control. Is there any other way to work this out before it gets to the point where there's tear gas and rubber bullets and horses and arrests and flex cuffs and paddy wagons, and 500 people it's probably a low number of arrested people, and 12 officers injured, probably a low number, double both those numbers in my opinion, because it just kept going on and on and on. I think today, as we record this, on Tuesday, I believe it's settled down significantly. But that's the decision that the protesters have to make. Don't they work? How can you go there and protest for so long without going back to your life? So when the protesters decide to become more in compliance with the law and the safety rules that are set up, then the police officers also de-escalate. And then that's the resolution that you're headed for. And hopefully it works, and hopefully no one else is injured. We had some protests here in Houston, where we're from, and apparently a few thousand people showed up downtown. And I understand that it was a peaceful event. I didn't see anything about arrests or injuries or anything like that. In Texas, you certainly have a group dynamic where you have a lot of people in the summertime that could be 100 degrees outside. So there could be some dehydration or some overwhelming heat issues medically, but it doesn't speak to the demeanor of the crowd, or they were injured because of their participation or simply their presence. I think sometimes people just get overheated. So if you had some medical transports from this event, that's probably what they were.
As you were saying that, I was just thinking the police, the LAPD, when this is all over, I think you already said it, but they must go into training afterwards and go, okay, what can we learn from this? How can we do better for the crowd, better for the police officers, and better for the public next time? It might be wise for the other side to do the same thing, like you were saying, to come up with a more effective way of getting their point across without using these violence. It's just going to get everything out of control. I don't think it's really what anybody really wants. I don't think the protesters that went there wanted the violence necessarily, and certainly the police didn't. But there they were, and they all had to play their part in coming to this resolution that we are now in. I saw today, as of Tuesday today, I saw reported that the curfews were getting more relaxed, and that it sort of does feel like in LAPD, according to reports, that it's calming down a bit, and that's good. Maybe I looked through the nation of protests this weekend, and I didn't see very many. I saw one report, a person did drive a car into a protest and injured one person. There were a couple of stories I saw, but I think that there were a big number of people protesting this weekend, mostly peaceful protests. So good job on both sides, on the police and on the side of the protesters, for making that work. That's how it can be. Is there anything else you'd like to relay to the audience about protesting, about the police role in this, about this LA scene in general? Anything else that you want to share with the crowd?
Enjoy your right to advocate for your beliefs. My advice, do it peacefully. My advice, if you go to a large organized event or disorganized event perhaps, and it starts changing in dynamic, and they're starting to see tear gas or smoke or other things that we've talked about, time to go. Some of these folks brought their children out there, and that's really irresponsible. But remember, both sides are seeking a strategic advantage. Yes, both sides will go back and review cell phone video, they'll review dash cam video, they'll review body cam video from the police in an effort to debrief about this and learn, why did this intersection fail, or why did that building, was it overcome, or why didn't we do this or that? Both sides are going to strategically analyze how we can more effectively cause a problem, or how can we more effectively solve or prevent a problem. So we're praying for our cities. I think California has a tough road ahead of them. And whichever side of this you're on, I'm not advocating you to be on either side. I'm just saying that whatever side you're on, do it peacefully. And, we don't ever talk about the thousands of people that are inconvenienced because the freeway shut down. They've got places to go. They've got to be at jobs. They've got to pick up their children from daycare. None of that matters to these protesters because they have a single-minded objective to be noticed and to captivate the media. And I think that the incidental disadvantages and dangers that occur are very real.
Well, thank you for your time and for talking to us about this. This is a really interesting and current thing that's happening to us. Thank you all for watching at home, and thank you to our police officers, and thank you to our peaceful protesters. That's a right as an American. You're living the American dream. So thank you to everybody that did their best during this. I believe that we as a country just continue to learn from our mistakes and get better. So thank you all for watching. Thank you for tuning in. And like we say every week, there is safety in numbers. This is the SAFESECURE 360 podcast. Thank you. This is the SAFESECURE 360 podcast. The information provided in our podcasts is for general information uses only and is not intended as legal advice. The views and opinions expressed by the guests are their own. Always consult with a qualified professional before making safety and security decisions. For more information about this topic, check out our website at safesecure360.com.